This is Colombia, the home of Cumbia, Shakira, and yes, emeralds. Located in northern South America, Colombia is ranked as the second most biodiverse country on the planet and is home to one of South America's fastest growing economies. And despite a somewhat troubled past, Colombia is reinventing its international image and could be emerging as a standout economy in the region. In order to understand why, how, and when this all happened, we must dive into the history. Welcome to the Economy of Colombia. After Colombia gained independence in the early 19th century, its economy was based mainly on the agriculture and mining sectors. At the time, its economic system was regional rather than national, and like in many countries, land and wealth was in the hands of a minority, while the majority was subject to forced labor that took place in the mines, as well as special labor arrangements in the haciendas, which are comparable to large estates, in which laborers worked on various money-making activities that benefited the landowners rather than raising them out of poverty. Towards the end of the 19th century, coffee exports began to play an increasingly significant role in the economy, and after the Thousand Days' War between 1899 and 1902, the industry experienced a boom. In fact, this boom was so significant that coffee exports were estimated to have grown from 8% of total exports in the 1870s to nearly 75% by the mid-1920s. This was extremely important for social reasons as well as economic ones, since unlike mining and some agricultural produce, which tended to be grown on large plantations, in Colombia, coffee production developed on small plots of land. This created a class of small landowners who could generate wealth. This wasn't by accident though. In fact, the Federación Nacional de Cafeteros de Colombia, or the National Federation of Coffee Growers of Colombia, was set up in 1927 to help protect the industry, study the industry's problems, and to further its interests. Now, after Japan had been sent some freedom packages by the US, Colombia was busy implementing one of two major strategies adopted in the 1950s and 1960s. The first of which was a program of import substitution industrialization. This was a common program in the Global South at the time that saw Colombia's government encourage the production of goods that Colombians were importing from abroad in order to reduce its dependence on other nations and boost domestic production. This program was abandoned though after 17 years, and in 1967 an export-oriented economic strategy came into place that also looked at diversifying Colombia's economy. This saw a competitive exchange rate set by Colombia's central bank, as well as tax exemptions for companies looking to export non-traditional goods, such as clothing. In the decades that followed, Colombia's government began to play multiple roles in the economy, especially with regards to the exploration of natural resources like oil and coal. In fact, government intervention in the foreign exchange market contributed to the development of a black market, which played a role in bringing back the proceeds of the sales of illicit drugs in the USA and Europe. In the late 80s and 90s though, Colombia went through some big changes, both political and economic. A new constitution was written, and many structural changes that involved trade liberalization as well as reforms in the areas of labor, finance, and the foreign exchange market took place. In the late 90s, with the Asian and Russian economic crises being a thing, Colombia as well experienced an economic recession, its first in over 60 years. However, the story since then has been very impressive, with growing petroleum prices in the 2000s contributing nicely to Colombia's exports. In fact, since Colombia's recession, it has averaged an annual growth rate of 3.8% in the first 2 decades of the 21st century, bringing us to where the Colombian economy today finds itself. So, what does the modern economy of Colombia look like? Which industries play an important role? And where might the South American country be heading? Colombia's economy today ranks as the 38th largest in the world and the 4th largest in Latin America, with a GDP of $323 billion. On a per capita basis, it ranks 92nd behind Brazil and Mexico, but ahead of South Africa. On the Ease of Doing Business Index, Colombia ranks 67th, which compared to its peers is not a bad score. Now, being a large and diverse country, Colombia is full of many natural resources that now play a significant role in the country's exports. It's home to the largest coal reserves in Latin America, as well as possessing significant quantities of gold, silver, nickel, oil, and emeralds. In fact, Colombia is the world leader in emerald production, historically making up 2/3 of the global supply, with production in the country increasing 78% between 2000 and 2010. And with dinosaur juice being Colombia's most important export, this has made the South American country very dependent on its mining and energy industries. If we take a look at Colombia's exports, more than 58% were raw materials. And given how volatile the price of some commodities can be, this makes Colombia quite susceptible when the global economy hiccups. Despite this somewhat worrying picture though, there are many bright areas in Colombia's economy, areas that may very well help Colombia diversify. In recent years, there have been two particular industries that have been booming in Colombia. We're talking about the tourism and the creative industries. You see, in a country like Colombia, in which you can find the Amazon rainforest, the Andes mountain range, the Pacific and Caribbean coasts, and 2 deserts, it's no real surprise that the South American country has quite some allure. Add into the mix the fact that Colombia has become significantly safer in the last 30 years and has managed to stay out of international headlines, it makes sense why international tourist numbers have more than doubled between 2008 and 2018. This rapid increase in tourists has led to the industry representing 2.5% of all employment in the country and now contributes 2% of Colombia's GDP. And although the current pandemic has severely impacted the sector, it still remains an area of significant potential growth for the future. As for the creative industries, Colombia is a country on the move. Between 2005 and 2017, the creative industries averaged an annual growth rate of 5.5%, with nearly 250,000 people being employed in the industry in 2017. In fact, this wave of enthusiasm for Colombian culture and creative exports has resulted in more than 28,000 companies getting involved in the industry in the country's capital of Bogotá alone, 51% of which were established in the last 5 years. This thirst for Colombian exports is not a result of a particular Netflix series that portrays a man conducting some violent business while sending powder to some gringos. In fact, it's part of a political push to diversify Colombia's economy away from natural resources by instead using the power of ideas. The current goal of the Colombian president is to make the creative economy contribute 6% of GDP by 2022. So this all sounds promising, but who is Colombia going to export all this culture and creativity to? Who are Colombia's main trading partners? Since the sharp fall in oil prices in the mid-2010s, Colombia's current account deficit has swelled. Data for 2018 show that the country exported $42 billion of goods and services while importing $51 billion. But who is the chief importer of Colombian goods and services, I hear you ask? Well, that would be the United States of America. That's right, Uncle Sam's economic tentacles spread far. In fact, the US is responsible for 27% of all Colombian exports, followed by China, Panama, and Ecuador. As for imports, Colombians once again find themselves doing most of their trade with the nation of stars and stripes, with China this time also being a very important trade partner. Despite the two juggernauts of the global economy representing a sizable portion of Colombian trade though, Colombia does share economic ties with Latin American peers as part of the Pacific Alliance trade bloc. In addition to this, Colombia even managed to join the OECD as a full member, and while it is not a trading bloc, its acceptance into the organization is symbolic, given that other economies on the continent haven't managed to enter this club for the global cool kids. Colombia's economy has come a long way in the last couple of decades. Its development has permitted the improved living standards of many Colombians, from Medellin to Barranquilla. But despite this, it's still very much vulnerable to shocks in the price of petroleum, as well as changes in demand from its two largest trading partners. With healthy growth in industries that are fit for a 21st century Colombia, I'd expect, from an economic standpoint, that Colombia has a real chance of emerging as a regional powerhouse. However, with political tensions also being present within this resource-rich country, perhaps Colombia's future prosperity is just as dependent on its political stability as it is on its economic stability. Hi everyone, I hope you enjoyed this video about Colombia's economy. If there's anything you think I missed, let me know about it in the comment section below. Also, what do you think will happen to Colombia's economy over the next decade or two? I'd love to read your opinions in the comment section below. Anyway, don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and take care. Bye.